All right, we're on Chapter 10, Video 1. The War of 1812 is over. We still have Madison in as president, and like we had said, he had learned several lessons as a result of the War of 1812. One of the problems in the war was the fact that we didn't have a Bank of the United States, and so a second Bank of the United States was created, the first one having happened under Hamilton. He also is going to become more interested in protective tariffs, Madison will be, and internal improvements, having a better system of forts, a permanent army and a navy, better system of canals and roads and so forth for both business and the military, and he was interested in creating a national university. Many of these ideas had been Federalist ideas, and now he, as a Republican, has adopted these ideas. And we'll see that factor into our political parties in just a minute. So we mentioned the Second Bank of the United States. It was given a 20-year charter when it was created in 1816, and we'll see it become a problem when it's up for renewal in 20 or so years from now. But that bank would handle the national government's money, is the design for it. I've included in the PowerPoint a list of the early presidents and the dates that they were elected to try to help you keep things straight. And when you get to the bottom of the list, you'll see not just where Madison had been elected and re-elected in 1812, but then in 1816 you'll see where James Monroe had been elected. Monroe will be elected in 1816, and he'll get re-elected in 1820. And by 1820, the Federalist Party had somewhat disappeared. There were several reasons for that. One comes from their lack of popularity at the end of John Adams' term. Another reason is some of the key points that the Federalists had stood for, the Republicans ended up adopting as a result of the War of 1812. So it gets to a point where the Federalist Party had not won very many elections, and they just sort of disband. That doesn't mean that everybody agrees politically. It's just sort of a shifting time. But around 1820, we have what's called the Era of Good Feelings, and it's called that because it seems like everybody is Republican. It seems like people are getting along politically. It doesn't last, and the underlying differences in people's political thoughts still exist. But Monroe will be re-elected in 1820 without opposition. There were 3 electors who will vote for somebody else, even though nobody else really was running. But they'll vote for somebody else, though, so that Washington can have the distinction of being the only president elected unanimously. So in Monroe's presidency, he had as his Secretary of State John Quincy Adams. And John Quincy Adams is going to be an absolutely brilliant Secretary of State, and we'll see a number of things come from him. For example, there was a concern that the War of 1812 might flare back up, might cause some hard feelings among individuals. And so in 1817, the Rush-Bagot Treaty will be signed. And that treaty will say that there will be no warships on the Great Lakes. The British would have warships up there because they're in Canada. We would have warships there out of the United States, and there was a concern that one regular average guy would get mad at the other regular average guy, and they'd start shooting at each other and bring the 2 countries into war. So we just removed warships from the Great Lakes altogether in that Rush-Bagot Treaty. Then in 1818, there was the Convention of 1818, where the northern boundary of the United States will be set at the 49th parallel from Lake of the Woods across to the Oregon Territory. Now, Lake of the Woods is kind of just north of the Mississippi River. It gives you a general idea. So if you picture a map of the United States in mind, you'll note that very straight northern border. So it went, like I said, from Lake of the Woods to the Oregon Territory to try to keep that fence, basically, between British Canada and the United States. Now, that's not all that John Quincy Adams is going to be doing as Secretary of State. The Spanish have been losing their grip on this hemisphere for a number of years. And we're going to see an opportunity with them in Florida. Now, the Spanish had become very upset with us because of something Andrew Jackson had done. A few years earlier, Andrew Jackson had gone into Spanish Florida to chase down a couple of British guys whom he executed. And it made the British angry that he had executed the men, and it made the Spanish angry that he had invaded Spanish Florida. Now, John C. Calhoun at the time was Secretary of War and wanted Jackson fired. But John Quincy Adams is going to say, let me see what I can do with this. And he will go and talk with the Spanish and come out with the Adams-Onis Treaty, what's also called the Transcontinental Treaty, and what's also called the Florida Purchase Treaty. So we're going to be able to buy Florida for $5 million. In return, we give up any future claim to Texas or California. We meant it when we said it. And Spain will give up any claim to the Oregon Territory. Now, excuse me. John Quincy Adams will also sign the Russo-American Agreement in 1823 between us and Russia. Russia had been in what today is Alaska in North America, and this Russo-American Agreement will set the 5440 line as the southern boundary of Russia's claim to the Oregon Territory. So it gets Russia out of Oregon. They're still in what is today Alaska, but it gets them out of Oregon, and it leaves the United States and the British as being the only ones with claims to Oregon. But one of the crowning achievements of John Quincy Adams under the Monroe administration was the Monroe Doctrine. Like I said, Spain had been losing their grip on this hemisphere, and we wanted to make sure that they don't try to come back and reclaim any territory that they had lost. For example, in 1821, they lost Mexico. Mexico became independent. We want to make sure they don't come back and try to reclaim it. So the Monroe Doctrine has 4 points to it. The first is that this hemisphere is closed to any new colonization. You can't come over here and try to claim a piece. Secondly, any attempt to claim a piece, to colonize here, will be seen as a threat to us. So what we're meaning is if you try to colonize in Central America or South America, some new colony, we will see it as a threat to us, and you'll have to deal with us as well. The third point is that we will not interfere with any existing colonies. If you already have territory over here, we're not talking about that. We're not messing with that. You just don't need to come over here and try to claim any new territory. And the fourth point is that we would stay out of European wars. And again, we meant it at the time. This is our longest statement of foreign policy that we have in our history. It still stands today, and it's one of many reasons why other countries haven't tried to come over and seize territory in Central or South America.